Tonight is a little bit different. Answering Skeptics, Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is an interesting guy. I kind of put it like this. Richard Dawkins is kind of like Gru. You guys know who I'm talking about? Gru from the Minions? He is literally like Gru, and he's got all his minions. So if you deal with the things that Richard Dawkins is bringing up, you're going to deal with a bunch of things that the minions are bringing up. And so that's why I kind of go after his stuff. He's still probably, he's at least one of the most popular atheists out there. He's kind of fading away, but nobody's really stepped up to replace him. So we'll deal with that. This morning, I told you guys about coming and digging dinosaur bones with me for a second, so please allow me to just briefly share this with you. I've got a DVD over there called WMI, Weapons of Mass Destruction, and I know that not everybody can come with me to go dig the dinosaur bones, even though I really want you to. And I would encourage the school, man, to make a school trip. I've got 10 coming from a youth group in Gillette, Wyoming. They're coming to this because I love getting the younger generation out in the dinosaur fields, digging the bones so that they can see for themselves. Do the rocks really show slow gradual processes over millions of years, or do they support the fact that God judged sin the way that he said that he did? He did. July 9 to 13 is when we're doing it, but since I know folks, not everybody can come, I went out and I actually shot video and we turned it into a TV show. And this is just like a little promo for that DVD that's over there at WMI. It's 28 minutes, it's got Spanish subtitles. So it's the only product that I have right now that has Spanish subtitles if you're trying to reach the Hispanic community. But this is the kind of look and feel of it, because I just wanted to share that with you. Think about the amazing beauty and complexity that we see in the world around us. How is it that so many people can understand these things so differently when we're all looking at the same evidence? I've always thought that when we're asked a question, we should question the question. What are we doing now?
Well, we're going to see about checking out some dinosaur bones. I'd like to have you do some digging on this.
No way.
A screwdriver?
Where's my big old hammer?
Oh, no.
We are constantly being bombarded by the perspective of the world. You might be wondering, what is a worldview? Who or what is impacting your worldview?
It's starting to petrify. This is all stone right here. So this is still real, live, it would burn type wood.
Wow. I can hear some of you laughing, but think about this. If there is no God, then that is the only alternative. This is amazing, man. I can't wait to get inside. So that's just like a little taste of it. And by the way, that petrified wood, most folks would look at that and say, so what? I'm telling you right now, that thing was huge. We were out digging, looking for bones, and we find this petrified wood. It's embedded in what's called the Hell Creek Formation that is dated to be 68 to 70 million years old. That's where the dinosaurs are found, is that formation, okay? Now think about this. This is application. This is going to tie into what we're going to do with Richard Dawkins here. You find a log that on the inside is 100% petrified, top is like 95% petrified, but then you flip it over and there's an inch of solid wood. And it's embedded in rock that is dated, quote unquote, to be 68 to 70 million years old. Anybody see a problem? How does wood last 68 to 70 million years and not rot? It doesn't. Guys, when you look at the actual evidence, it screams that God did what he said that he did the way that he said that he did it. And that's just from one tiny little thing. When you find the actual dinosaur bones, most of the bones, they'll just crumble and break. They're so soft. And that's why in that area, that's where they're finding the dinosaur bones that have red blood cells, tissue. Guys, osteocytes, the cells that make things grow, that stuff can't last 70 million years. So when you hear this, dinosaurs prove the earth is millions of years old, come dig bones with me and see for yourself. I'm telling you, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. The other talk I did this morning was best evidence. I've got a book that's, if you go online, I don't carry them with me anymore because they're so heavy, but if you go to Amazon and just type in Fast Facts, this is a 1-month devotional for parents and grandparents 1-month devotional that you can take every day, watch a 1.5-minute video with your child or your grandchild, and then it has, like it's got some fun artwork in there on the animal, then it has information, then it has questions, and then it's got the answers, you know, so that you can know what you're talking about, little posters, and a coloring sheet. It has a coloring sheet for you to every day have a 10 to 15-minute conversation with your child. And it's fun information. It's just all that kind of stuff that I was doing this morning with those animals. This is one of the videos. I figured I'd show that to you. And that's, it's just in this clamshell, but you can get the book. It's Kindle version as well. So if you like doing the Kindle stuff, that's the cheapest option. It's actually under $10 for the Kindle version. But welcome to Fast Facts with Reasons for Hope. I'm Carl Kerby, and we're talking about the hippopotamus. Hippos are cute, right? Well, no matter how funny a hippo may look, they're actually very dangerous. They're territorial and they fight to protect their area as well as their status. In Africa, they kill about 2,900 humans every year. That's more than any other animal other than the mighty mosquito. Yes, you heard that correctly. But we're talking about the hippo's skin, remember? It's thick for a reason. Look at those teeth. They're as sharp as razors, and remember, they don't play very nice with each other. If the skin wasn't as thick as it is, when they bite each other, they would do serious damage. So the thickness actually protects the muscles from damage. As a matter of fact, their skin is so thick that they can survive attacks by lions. There's one more amazing fact about that skin. But our time's up, so we'll have to talk about that in the next Fast Facts with Reasons for Hope. Until then, stay bold. And then there's a series of questions that you can talk to make sure that they're getting the information. What you didn't see in the first video is, do you know how thick a hippopotamus's skin is? Anybody know? It's up to 2 inches thick. Their skin, 2-inch thick skin. And it's crazy that somebody would tell me that that came from a mouse that had mutations over millions of years. You're joking, right? I mean, 2-inch thick skin? And the design features in there are unbelievable. But tonight we're dealing with Richard Dawkins. So, Answering Skeptics, Richard Dawkins. I had some people ask me this morning, and I didn't do a good job of telling you this. Our website is rforh.com. R4 stands for Reasons for Hope, r4h.com. Please take advantage of that, put it to use, and there's just a bunch of stuff up on there. But can I do a magic trick for you? Man, you guys shouldn't remember from this morning. You got to talk to me. Can I do a magic trick for you? Yes. All right. This is very important. You got to listen to the instructions, because if you don't listen to the instructions, it's not going to work. I'm going to put 6 cards up here on the screen. Okay? So you have to pick one and remember the face and remember the suit. All right? Remember the face, remember the suit. Very important, because it's going to happen quick. It's going to go real quick, all right? So 6 cards coming up on the screen here. I'm going to flip them over, and I want you to pick one, face, suit. Here we go. Let's flip them over. Pick one, face, suit, face, suit. Now, focus on that red dot. Focus on that red dot. Very important. Okay. I'm going to take away your card, bringing back 5 cards. Did it work? Did it not work on anybody? Somebody beat me? Got a couple hands there? 3 hands? Okay, not bad, right? But I'll put it to you like this. I know that I beat every one of you, because none of those 5 cards are the same as the first 6 cards. Now, why would I do that to you? For a couple of reasons. Number one, it's an illustration to let you know that Satan doesn't play fair. This is the way the world operates. Why did I tell you to pick one card? I didn't want you to notice what the other cards were so that you knew that I changed all of the cards. Why did I tell you that it's very important that you follow the instructions? If you don't follow the instructions, it's not going to work. Why? Because I'm just throwing information at you, trying to make it seem like it's important. It's going to work whether you follow the rules or not. Why did I tell you to focus on the red dot? No reason. But guys, you got to understand, if you throw enough information at somebody, Our tendency is, oh, we're overwhelmed. If I use a vocabulary that is superior to somebody, our tendency is, oh, I need to be quiet because I don't have a PhD. And I don't have a PhD, right? I've told you that from the very beginning. I am the son of a professional wrestler. You got PhDs, you got dummies. You're looking at the dummy. But the one thing with this dummy is it's very hard to blow smoke at me and me not see it. When you grow up in the home of a professional wrestler and you see guys on stage one thing and off the stage another, you learn to see through the fakeness. This stuff is fake. So we're going to answer skeptics. We're going to go after Richard Dawkins because he's a key guy. And we're going to give you some tools to deal with the arguments that they use. I want to start off with the scripture here. It says this, be strong and of good courage. Don't be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, it's he's going to go with you. He's not going to fail you and he's not going to forsake you. When you and I can hang on to that, I don't care what credentials anybody has. One of the number one attacks against me, and I get it quite often, is the secular world will come after me and say, you don't have a PhD in science. You shouldn't be talking about these things because you don't have a PhD. And you're absolutely correct. I don't have a PhD. But I know how to read. I know that's surprising, but I can read. And my argument is, don't attack the credentials. Attack the points that I'm raising. If I'm incorrect in my information, show me where I'm incorrect, and I will thank you. Because you see, I take it very seriously that I'm giving information to a younger generation that I'm going to be held accountable for. Because if I'm giving false information to this younger generation, I have a millstone waiting on me, and I don't want it. So I try very hard to make sure that my arguments are accurate and very complete. So if you see something that I'm incorrect on, and show me, please. But credentials, I don't care about credentials. I care about the truth. And God tells us to have, therefore, brethren, boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of God. And the only way that I can have boldness is when I'm allowing God to be the authority in my standard. When I speak in my own strength and my own wisdom, I am not very bold, trust me. But when I stand on God's word, that's when the boldness comes out. Most folks don't realize when I stand up here and speak, this is not me. It truly is not me. I am an introvert. I'm a guy that will hide. When I challenged this morning about can you give me the name of the last 3 people that you shared your faith with that don't know the Lord Jesus Christ in the last week, last month, last year, that is a personal challenge to me because my tendency is to get on an airplane, as I did yesterday, and want to put headphones on my head and not talk to the person that's trapped next to me for the hour, hour and a half, 2-hour flight. I'm not an outgoing person. God is the one that's forcing me to get out of my comfort zone to speak to people. I don't like it, but it's not about me, it's about Him. And so don't think I'm chucking stones at you. The boldness is going to come from Him. It's not going to come from me and my background and my strength. Trust me on that. So here we go. I put it like this. You can only talk about what you know about. So let's know what the arguments are and how to overcome some of them. Richard Dawkins went in. This is an old video. Richard Dawkins went to Washington, D.C., and he went to Concerned Women for America, who at that time, the head was a lady named Wendy Wright. And she was unaware that he was coming. He shows up with a film crew. Now I'm going to make a statement here, and I hope it doesn't offend you, but personally I think Richard Dawkins is a punk. I just think he's a punk. Because he will not debate the William Lane Craigs of the world, the guys that have credentials, not me. William Lane Craig's been trying to debate him for years. He will not debate him, because it will give him credibility. But what will he do? He will show up on the doorstep of a lady this isn't her world. Creation evolution isn't her world. And he'll show up with a film crew to badger her. That's a punk. I'm sorry. If you're such a man, take on the big dogs that want to have the debates with you. All right? So let's take a look at his arguments and learn some tools to help us that the world uses to get us to doubt, I should say. Tools that are used to get us to doubt. And one of the big tools that the world loves to use is condescension. Big time. Younger generation, I'm telling you right now, the day that you leave the confines of this Christian school, and if you choose to go to a secular school, or even a compromising Christian school, which there are many, you're going to walk into a professor who's going to chew you up and spit you out, and just condescension is a big tool that they use. Let me give you a simple illustration of this, very simple illustration from this first clip. We're going to watch these clips and we're going to break them down and learn from them.
Where did you study science?
Where did you study science? It's used against me all the time. Well, let me give you a tool on how to deal with it. And by the way, guys, you can just leave the lights down, because seriously, keep the screen as bright as possible. I'm going to be bouncing in between. You don't have to worry about bouncing it up and down. Where did I study science? Excuse me, sir. If you're going to challenge me on my science credentials, may I ask you a simple, humble question? Where did you study the Bible? Because you sure have a lot to say about it. And if by your rules, I can't talk about these things because I don't have a PhD in science, then why are you talking about the Bible? Because you don't have a PhD in the Bible. Where did you study Christianity? You have a lot to say about it. You love to mock it. You love to ridicule it. Why do you have the right to talk about it if you don't have a PhD? It has nothing to do with credentials. It has everything to do with what I'm saying. Does it line up with truth, with facts or not? And sometimes I think we have to speak boldly. I think we have to put a little oomph in our back and tell people straight. You don't have to run and hide. You don't need to be disrespectful either. You can speak the truth in love. And that's what God tells us to do. Speak the truth in love. And that's what we have to do. So what is the evidence that Dr. Dawkins uses to try to get Christians to cower? Let's take a listen to some.
I'm sorry, but we can show you the evidence. All you need to do is read an elementary textbook of biology. It's all there.
Well, that's interesting. You should bring out the textbooks on biology. We still have textbooks today.
Yeah, I know you're going
that
to talk about peppered moths and you're going to talk about Haeckel's embryos.
No. In fact, what I was going to talk about is what they claim to be the evolution of a fetus in the womb,
Yes,
based on
Haeckel's
hand
embryos,
drawings,
yeah.
which have been proven to be false, and yet they continue to be published in scientific textbooks.
Haeckel's embryos are just one little thing. It's a Victorian thing. Plenty of people made mistakes in
And
Victorian.
yet continues to be published in today's textbooks.
Well, no longer actually, but I don't think it's really fair, is it, to pick on particular Victorian mistakes. It is a Victorian mistake. I
Oh,
mean,
but it was
what
carried
about
over
coming
into
up
the
to
20th
date?
century.
Yes, and that was a mistake, and that's been corrected.
Ooh, scared me. Anybody catch the condescension? Read an elementary textbook on biology. I have. And believe it or not, I've read the college level textbooks on biology. As a matter of fact, I've got about 10 of them in my house because I collect them and read them to see if what he is stating is true or not. Embryonic recapitulation, are you familiar with it? It's a big word to say nothing more than a child, when it's inside the mother's womb, a human child goes through various stages, kind of redoing the evolutionary stages. So at one point you have a tail, at another point you have a yolk sac, you have a heart like a pig, and you go through these changes to eventually become human. So one of the arguments is, when you have an abortion, you're not killing a child, it's a blob of flesh, or it's going through a fish stage, or it's going through a pig stage. No, you're a human being from the point of conception. Period. And he said this, hold me accountable, that was a mistake and that's been corrected. Is that what he said? That's not taught in the textbooks anymore. Really? Okay. Let me show you the original pictures. This goes back to the late 1800s. And these are the supposed embryos of humans and pigs and fish and turtles and chickens, okay? And when you look at the very top, take a look. You would be hard pressed to know which one is which if you didn't have the titles up there, because these things all look alike. There's only one problem. These drawings were fraudulent, and they were known to be fraudulent within years of them initially coming out. Ernst Haeckel, one of the guys the guy that drew these and popularized them, knew they were fraud, and they still put them out. Here's the drawings. Here's what the fish actually looks like. Looks pretty similar, right? I mean, look at that. Oh yeah, very similar. And by the way, just because they were similar doesn't mean that they're the same. Those original drawings are still in the textbooks. I'll prove it to you. This is a college level textbook, Molecular Biology of the Cell, and this is what he says. Early developmental stages of animals whose adult forms appear radically different are often surprisingly similar. Neo-Darwinian mechanisms explain why embryos of different species so often resemble each other in their early stages as they develop, seem sometimes to replay the steps of evolution. It's not true. You do not replay the steps of evolution. When you see these drawings, which are still in the textbooks, showing that you have a tail, you never had a tail, period. Oh, but we have a tailbone. No, you have a coccyx. It's a tiny bone. And it has nothing to do with being a tail, and if you don't think it's important, fall on it. Anybody ever fallen on it? Did it hurt? And for a long time. Because without that little tiny bone, you don't walk upright. That's how important that bone is, because it's a major connecting point for all of your abdominal muscles. You don't walk upright without your guts falling out if you don't have that little tiny bone. That's the bottom line. You don't think it's important? It's extremely important. But it's a tail. No, it's not. As you're developing, think about this. If something has a beginning, it has to have an end. That's the end of the spinal column. It's not a tail. Has not. Oh, but some children are born with tails. Go do the research. Not at all. There's never been a child born with a caudal vertebra with the tail. They have fatty cysts, and it's a genetic problem. Matter of fact, when you see most of these children that have that quote-unquote tail, it is terrible what happens to those poor children. Most of them can't walk. It's got nothing to do with being a tail. It's a genetic mutation. You never had a yolk sac, and you never had gill slits. What they label as gill slits, those are pharyngeal pouches. They have nothing to do with respiration, not a thing. They turn into other parts in your body, the thyroid, which is mine is whacked. I'm on medication because of it. Guys, total distortion of the truth. And you don't think those images are still used? Here's another textbook, exact same images. Check this out, exact same images used at the top. Douglas Fuduyama, he knows that those images aren't correct, and take a listen to what he has to say when confronted about it. As such, if textbooks use the drawings at all, it's as a historical example and as a way to illustrate the concept in such a way that students are able to grasp it immediately. Even if the drawings are fraudulent, they can still be used for this purpose because the concept they illustrate is by no means fraudulent. So help me understand this. It's okay for me to use fake pictures to prove a quote-unquote true point? Hello? If it's a true point, why don't I use real pictures? You see, if we don't challenge these guys, this is what you're going to get. Satan doesn't play fair. And one of the other tools that Satan uses to get us to doubt is deception in a major way. In a major way. So let's go back, and what's the evidence that he uses to prove that we evolved over the course of 14 billion years? What's the evidence? Because I want to see that.
Or even beyond that, surely there'd be at least one
There's a
evidence.
massive amount of evidence. I'm sorry, but you people keep repeating that like a kind of mantra because you just listen to each other. I mean, if only you would just open your eyes and look at the
Show it
evidence.
to me. Show me the bones. Show me the carcass. Show me the evidence of the in-between stage from one species to another.
Every time a fossil is found which is in between one species and another, you guys say, now we've got two gaps where previously there was only one. I mean, almost every fossil you find is intermediate with something and something else.
If that were the case, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum would be filled with these examples, but instead they're not.
It is.
You are now talking my language. We do online classes called Academy of Hope, and the first one that I did that's up online right now is on the fossil record. Let's go through the fossil record. One that I just recorded and we're editing is the 20 most used evolutionary ancestors, human ancestors. 20 most. And we go through, and you do not read one Christian creationist source at all. You read nothing but secular sources to go through the 20 supposed evolutionary ancestors. And he's telling me that the Smithsonian is filled with the evidence that we evolved. Oh my, give me 3 hours of your life. We'll deal with every one of them. And you'll be shocked at how shallow this stuff is. By the way, did you catch the condescension, you people? It's a very effective tool. Now, by the way, he said there was a massive amount of evidence. Did I hear that correctly? Can somebody define massive for me? Maybe I don't understand what massive is. Would massive be 1,000? 100? 10? What would be massive? Give me a number. Billion. Okay, I want to make sure. Now, this next clip, I want you to listen for a theme. Now, in full disclosure, this next clip is a montage. You know what I'm saying? So I had a long section of video, and you don't want to watch it all. So I went through and I pulled snippets out to tie them together. And I want you to listen for a theme. And let's see if you notice anything. And so critically evaluate what we're watching here.
Now, in the case of humans, since Darwin's time, there's now enormous amount of evidence about intermediates in human fossils, and we've got various species of Australopithecus, for example, and these are, some Australopithecus are intermediate between others and ourselves. Then you've got Homo habilis, Homo erectus. These are intermediate between Australopithecus, which was an older species, and Homo sapiens, which is a younger species. I mean, why don't you see those as intermediates? Because when I just told you about Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, by the way, archaic Homo sapiens and then modern Homo sapiens, that's a beautiful series of
You're
intermediates.
still lacking the material evidence.
The material evidence is there. Go to the museum and look at it. Now, I presented you with, I don't have them here obviously, but you can go to any museum and you can see Australopithecus, you can see Homo habilis, you can see Homo erectus, you can see archaic Homo sapiens and modern Homo sapiens. A beautiful series of intermediates. Why do you keep saying present me with the evidence when I've done so? Go to the museum and look.
And I'm not convinced
Have you
with
seen
evolution.
Have you seen Homo erectus? Have you seen Homo erectus? Have you seen Homo habilis? Have you seen Australopithecus? I'm talking about facts. I'm talking about, I've told you about certain fossils, and every time I ask you about them, you evade the question and you turn to something else. But I have told you about 4 or 5 fossils, and you seem to simply be ignoring what I'm saying. Why don't you go and look at those fossils?
Observation time. What'd you catch? 4 or 5 fossils. That's massive? 4 or 5? What else? What else? What's that? Very badgering. Now, it looks worse than it is because of the way that I cut it, so that's what I'm telling you right now. It was clips, but he does continually cut her off. Continually demeaning and cutting. Absolutely. Anything else did you notice? What's that? No facts? Hold up. Have you ever seen Australopithecus? Have you ever seen Homo erectus? Have you ever seen Homo habilis? I mean, he's giving the facts. Oh, yes, I have. I've gone to the museums. I love taking people through the museums, and they have Australopithecus, various species, about 4 different species. They have Homo habilis, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, he's giving you the facts. Or is he? What's that? Okay. What else? What else did you catch? Anybody? Oh. But you know what? Jesus loves him. Jesus loves him and died for him. And that's my problem, is I really struggle with those guys too. I don't like the nastiness, I don't like the meanness, but Christ died for him as much as he died for me or anybody else. And we have a responsibility to do what God said, which was to study to show ourselves approved, to give an answer for the reason for the hope that lies within us with meekness and fear. I'm using sarcasm to keep you awake tonight, but I'm telling you right now, when I deal with the lost people, I'm not mocking, I'm not ridiculing, because that was me before Christ pulled the scales off my eyes. All right? Did you notice that when he started off, he was more like the professor, and then towards the end, he's a little more aggressive, to put it mildly? Why? I'm going to suggest to you that if you and I get in a debate, and I ask you a question, and you don't answer that question, and you go into la-la land, what do you think I'm going to do to you? I'm going to call you back to this. This is what I asked you. I didn't ask you about la-la land. I asked you this. You're not dealing with it. You go to la-la land, I'm going to get frustrated and say, you're not answering my question. She didn't answer the question. I'm not attacking Wendy Wright. But how many in here tonight, be honest, I'm not trying to mock or ridicule, how many in here tonight feel comfortable talking about Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, archaic Homo sapien? Very few of us. We don't know. Well, I want you to know, so we're going to deal with them. We're going to deal with them very briefly, but I want to give you enough nuggets that you know that there are answers, so that if you want to go study some more, you can go study some more. Take a listen. Take a listen. I'm going to back up my point that's why he got frustrated with her, because take a listen.
You said there are no fossil intermediates, and when I told you about fossil intermediates, you changed the subject.
I don't want you to change your subject if this comes up. I want you to have answers. These next 2 quotes from Richard Dawkins, I could sign my name to. I really could. I want you to look at the facts. Don't believe what you've been told that there's no evidence. Just go look at the evidence. I want you to go to the museums and look at the facts. And don't believe what you've been told that there's no evidence. Just go look at the evidence. Amen. I would sign my name to that right now. I told you I'm leading tours through the Smithsonian, through the Chicago, through the Denver Museum, through the London Museum of Natural History. Because I want this generation to see the truth and know how to deal with it. When you know how to look at it, man, it's a game. It is fun to walk into these facilities as a Christian. Now, one of the other tools that's used to get us to doubt is intimidation. And he tries to do that very strongly. Don't be intimidated. This is what he said, direct quote, enormous amount of evidence about intermediates in human fossils, various species of Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, archaic Homo sapien, and modern Homo sapiens. So let's deal with them. Now, the most famous of the Australopithecines would be Lucy. Have any of you ever heard of Lucy? She's the most famous, okay? The other ones are really nothing. She's the only one that has any legitimacy to the claim of being a quote-unquote human ancestor missing link. So, this is a chart from Don Johanson, the guy who discovered Lucy. He wrote a book and he made this chart up depicting how when you start on the far left there with Ardipithecus rhamidus, given enough time, tiny changes, this thing turned into this thing, turned into this thing, and eventually turned into the Homo sapiens all the way up at the top. Lucy, quote-unquote, is the common ancestor between the humans at the top and apes at the bottom. Now, the skinny line means story. Skinny line means they don't have any evidence. And they also show it in other ways. They show it in dashed lines, they show it in different colored lines. But in this case, you're seeing two different types of lines. The bold line is fact. Bold line is what they actually found. The skinny line is how they tie it all together, but they have no evidence to do that. It's all based on a world view. Does that make sense to you? I'm going to fill this chart in. I'm just starting with Ardipithecus rhamidus, which is no longer there, but anyway, there, all the way up to humans, and let's deal with a couple of these, the ones that he brought up. Lucy is the common ancestor, quote unquote, right there. Now, first of all, you want to see how easy it is to get rid of some of these supposed ancestors, especially at the museums? You see those bottom three things? They're parenthepus. Not a one of them is in the human lineage, but every one of them are on the human family tree, quote unquote. Why would you put something that's not in the human lineage on the quote-unquote human family tree? Because there's nothing to have on there, so you fill it in with whatever you have. So not a one of those is in the human lineage, but Lucy, she's right there, the yellow part. She's the quote-unquote common ancestor between apes and humans. She's the most famous. Well, a number of years ago, they actually brought the bones out of Africa, first time ever, and put the actual bones. When you go to museums, 99% of the time, you don't see the actual bones. You see copies of those bones. They brought the actual bones out of Africa, they put them on display in Houston. All right? They were driving kids from Shreveport, Louisiana, 7 hours away, one way, to go down to see the bones. I was speaking in Shreveport when this happened. And the kids were telling me, it was like, yeah, it's like going to church. I'm like, what do you mean? As you walk in, they're like, shh, shh, quiet, quiet. Shh, you're looking at Lucy. And I said, man, I'd have been like, dude, she's dead. You're not going to wake her up. According to you, she's been dead for 3.2 million years. Why can't we touch? Shh. You don't think museums aren't like churches? Oh, yes, they are. They're churches of secular humanism. So, they made a study guide for the teachers to use, and I'm telling you right now, the teachers didn't read it, because I did. I actually got a copy of it. You don't have a PhD. I don't need a PhD to read this. This is their book. This is what they say about Lucy on page 20. For many years, Lucy was thought to be a direct human ancestor, but we now see her as belonging to a separate group of hominids from those which became our species Homo sapien. What does that mean? Lucy is not in the human lineage. She is not the missing link between apes and humans. Period. That's their writing. This is the actual exhibit of the bones that came out of Africa. Their writing said that she's not in the human lineage. That's the most famous of the supposed evolutionary ancestors. Here's another article, Jerusalem Post. Israeli researchers, Lucy is not a direct ancestor of humans. By the way, let me take you to Mr. Richard Leakey. Oh, now. Anybody ever hear the Leakey name before? Man, if you study human evolution at all, you will hear the Leakey name. The Leakey name is like the most famous name in human evolution. So out of respect, whenever I say Leakey, you need to hum. Let me hear you hum. Ah, that's pretty good. Okay, so whenever I say Leakey, you guys got to hum. And you just didn't hum. So, all right, you ready? All right, take a look at what he has to say. If pressed about man's ancestry, I would have to unequivocally say that all we have is a huge question mark. To date, there's been nothing found to truthfully purport as a transitional species to man, including... So Lucy's gone. Since 1470 was as old and probably older, if further pressed, I would have to state that there is more evidence to suggest an abrupt arrival of man rather than a gradual process of evolving. May I give you an explanation for an abrupt arrival of man? In the beginning, God took dust, he formed it. He breathed into it life and man became a living being. That's about as abrupt as it gets. And that's what the evidence supports. So much for Lucy. And by the way, if you want to give me 30 minutes, we'll go through a whole lot more on her. Show you exactly what they found and what they had to do to make it from an ape-like fossil to a human-like fossil. I can show it to you. But we're trying to run through these things. Homo habilis, what are you going to do? I mean, come on, handyman, what are you going to do, Carl? Look at this guy. That's a scary-looking guy right there. Discovered by Louis Leakey. Thank you. Some of you remembered. So the father of the son that I quoted discovered this, okay? He discovered it at Olduvai Gorge. Homo habilis, Homo habilis. Oh, hold up. Let's go back to that quote that I read by the son. To date, there's been nothing found to truthfully purport as a transitional species to man since 1470. Look, when they find bones, they not only give them names, they give them numbers. 1470, when it was initially discovered, was Homo habilis. So the son of the guy who discovered the bones said that it's not in the human lineage. But they reclassified it, Carl. You're out of date. Yes, they did. They reclassified it to Homo rudolfensis. We'll talk about it. 1470 is not classified as Homo rudolfensis. But let me take you to the Smithsonian website. We don't use secular Christian stuff. We use only secular sources. And what do they have to say about Homo habilis, okay? We read their little stuff, discovered in 1960, discovered by Louis and Mary Leakey. We don't know everything about our ancestors. Thank you, I heard the hum. We don't know everything about our early ancestors, but we keep learning more. What don't we know about our early ancestors? Let's take a look. Below are some of the still unanswered questions about Homo habilis that may be answered with future discoveries. Was Homo habilis on the evolutionary lineage that evolved into later species of Homo and even perhaps our species Homo sapien? If you're asking that question, that means you don't have the answer. Am I right? Or am I misreading that? If you're asking that question, you don't know. As a minimum, you don't know. Why are you putting it in the human lineage? Are Homo habilis and Homo rudolfensis indeed different species? Or are they part of one single variable species, or was one the ancestor of the other? They don't know. They don't have a clue. If Homo habilis is not the ancestor of Homo erectus, how does it fit in our evolutionary tree? They don't have a clue, guys. Don't have a clue. So when you see these charts that have all this stuff on there, we can go through, we can break it all down, but let me show you the easiest chart of all. There's Homo habilis. Extended out, would it ever lead to human beings? Homo, us. No. So much for Homo habilis. It's an evolutionary dead end at best, according to the chart that from the guy who discovered Lucy. How about Homo erectus, upright walking man? Whoa, this is important. Looky here. Well, let's look at the chart again. Extend them out. According to their chart, would it ever lead to human beings? No, according to their chart. It'd be another evolutionary dead end. Now, I'm going to throw this in just for fun because I've heard some young folks bring it up to me. Homo ergaster. I don't know who's using this argument. I didn't hear Dawkins use it, but somebody is because I'm getting the college kids using this one on me. Well, what about this one? Well, I went and I did some research. This is the secular quotes that I found. Maybe, hold up, if the best is that you've got is something that may be something, I'm still feeling really good with my position. But let's keep going. May be an early form of Homo erectus found only in Africa. Its designation as a separate species is debated. So if something is maybe and is being debated, I still feel really good with my position. But let's take it one step further. Let's take it back to the Smithsonian. Homo ergaster was discovered by Richard Leakey in 1984. 1984. 1984. Anybody remember a quote we've been reading? To date, there's been nothing found to truthfully purport, right? This is the guy that discovered Homo ergaster. And to date, there's nothing been, do you see the date that he made this quote? Bottom right-hand corner. 1990. So 6 years after discovering Homo ergaster, who people want to throw at me as a supposed evolutionary ancestor, the guy who discovered it said it's not in the lineage. So much for that one. And here's some more of those charts. See the Homo ergaster? By the way, do you see the dotted lines there? The dotted lines are the same thing as the skinny lines. No evidence. The bold lines are the actual evidence. So Homo ergaster is not in the lineage, according to the guy who discovered it. So much for that one. But archaic Homo sapien. Can we be blunt here? Archaic Homo sapien is Homo sapien. Oh, but Neanderthal man. Neanderthal man. What a scary looking guy. I mean, take a look at the teeth and the eyebrow ridges on this guy. This is a man that needed a dental plan, I can tell you that. Totally human. Neanderthal man was totally human. Matter of fact, anybody ever had your DNA tested to see where you come from? 23andMe, just did it. My mom's told me my whole life that my great-great-great-grandfather was full-blooded Scots-Irish and his wife was Cherokee. Her name was Cherokee Nicotai Natabi and all this stuff. So I did this thing. I'm like 75% English. 1% American, Indian. I was like, so great-grandma was not full-blooded Cherokee, all right? That's just not working. So much for all these great, wonderful stories that you get passed down over time. You can see how much Neanderthal DNA you have inside of you with these new tests. If you can interbreed, you are the same species. Neanderthal was human. Oh, but look at the eyebrow ridges. Look, if you think just because you got big eyebrow ridges that you came from apes, you tell this guy that. Former professional boxer in Russia. He's now part of the parliament. If you want to tell him he evolved from the apes, you feel froggy jump. I'm not messing with the guy. And Cro-Magnon, the big eyebrow ridges. Look, there are people with the big eyebrow ridges today. Doesn't mean anything. Just means you got big eyebrow ridges. Look, I was speaking at a men's conference about 4 months back up in the hills of California, and one of the MMA fighters was there. His name is Rafael dos Anjos. And so he's at this thing with his son. And I'm talking with this guy. My man had serious eyebrow ridges. In that sport, when you're banging your head, it causes them to grow. You think I'm telling him he came from the apes? I'm not messing with that dude. He was nasty. He was a really nice guy, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? He'd hurt me, man. That guy he was nasty. Let me take you to History Channel. That's not a Christian source. What about Neanderthal man? Take a listen to what they have to say.
Neanderthal seems so promising when it's first presented. It seems like it's going to be the answer, but on closer inspection, it starts to fall apart. Most importantly, the key fossils just seem to be too much like humans. Neanderthal at best is a man with some ape qualities.
You want to see some of those guys? Stick around after the talk. We'll be watching them. When you go to Germany today, go to Neander Valley, you're going to see the original drawing of Neanderthal man. They showed him as this ape, brutish guy. I mean, hair all over his body. Excuse me, all you found were bones. How do you know how much hair somebody had on their body from bones? And number two, if you look at the toenails on this guy, not only did he need a dental plan, he needed a pedicure. He had crazy toenails, all right? But guess what? They found more bones, and they drew Neanderthal man later walking upright. Didn't have the hair on his body, had to wear skins to keep himself warm. Well, they found even more bones, and today, if you put Neanderthal man, walk him down the street in a business suit, you wouldn't pick him out of a lineup. He had some unique design features, yes, but nothing outside of the realm of totally Homo sapien. And what's interesting to me, I've been doing this for a long time, and I was talking with somebody earlier, one of my mentors when I started this ministry was a guy named Dwayne Gish. Dr. Gish had hundreds, if not thousands of debates. He debated anybody. I loved the guy, I really did. But what I find extremely interesting, that looks just like Dwayne Gish. If you put glasses on that thing, it would look like Dwayne Gish. So you have a missing link that's evolved into a creationist from my perspective. Anybody feel a little more comfortable with Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, archaic Homo sapien? Anybody feel a little more comfortable? Guys, you don't have anything to be afraid of. You can study this stuff, you can read this stuff, and you don't need creationist sources. You just need to read the secular sources with a critical eye. That's it. I mean, let me show you one more chart, just one more chart. No, two more. I'm going to show you two more, maybe three. Cambridge Encyclopedia of Human Evolution. This isn't Billy Bob's book on evolution, okay? This is a secular source. I paid $55 for this book. I will sell it to you cheap. I just needed one picture. Evolution's a fact, you fundamentalist hick. Really? There's the chart depicting human evolution. Does anything look interesting to you? Do you notice the things that I enlarged so you can see them easier? The question marks. Guess how many there are? 11. You don't need to count them. Guess where they always take place? Where one thing is supposedly turning into another thing. Let me show you another chart, okay? This chart was done a few years ago for the 200th anniversary of the birth of Charles Darwin and 150th anniversary of the publication of Origin of Species. It was a big deal. They made the new chart depicting human evolution. And there it is, Carl. What you going to do? Do you see the skinny line? What does skinny line mean? No evidence. Do you see the question marks that they throw in just for good measure? This right here, oh man, my pointer doesn't work that well anymore. That line that's kind of in the, why doesn't my pointer work anymore? I'm gonna have to get a new pointer. The one that's kind of in the middle there, that's Lucy. And notice that Lucy is no longer connected in with anything above it. It's now considered an evolutionary dead end. The new missing link is that skinny line with two question marks. And then the apes, and then the humans. That's the new missing link? Yeah. When you look at these charts, guys, you've got to look critically. You see the black stuff? Black is time span of fossil species. What's the blue stuff? Hypothesized evolutionary links. What does that mean? Blue is no information. It's a guess, hypothesis. This is the Smithsonian. Let me show you how flexible this stuff is. Oh, look at all those ancestors. That's the human family tree. You start at the bottom, Sahelanthropus, give it enough time, it turns into humans. I don't like that explanation. So you know what I do? I put my finger on the cool little button on the right and I drag it down and I take and totally rearrange all the evidence into a totally different chart. Oh, but I don't like that one. So you know what I do? I put my finger on the little button again and I drag it down and I totally rearrange it in a totally different explanation. Which one is real? How about none of them? Have you ever seen this cartoon? It's used to make fun of Christians a lot. Big mathematic formula, and tying them together, then a miracle occurs. It's used to make fun of Christians a lot. And the science guy says, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but every place that there's a skinny line, get rid of it, because that's what you think. Let's deal with the actual evidence. If you want me to accept that this shows that something turned into us over time, I think you need to get a little bit more explicit here, and a little bit more explicit here, and a little bit more explicit here. Are you getting my point? Every one of those gaps, you better get a little bit more explicit if you think I'm going to sell out the Lord Jesus Christ for that. Guys, we can go on and on and on over this stuff, but the point is, we got a generation that's being deceived. And this stuff is getting thrown at them. And they don't know how to deal with it. And then we in the church don't deal with it because, well, that's science and that's this and we're doing our Bible stuff. Look, you've got to teach them how to apply their faith with this stuff. If God created the way that he said that he did, that the evidence should support it. And I'm here to say to you that the evidence does support it. Let me wrap up with this last little chart because I have to be honest and tell you that I actually did find actual evidence for evolution. It has happened in the donuts. It's the truth. I'm wrapping up here. There's only 2 ways that we got the donut, and I've done years of research on donuts as if you couldn't tell. In the beginning, man made the donut, or in the beginning, it just happened by chance, random processes. My research shows very clearly random chance processes. So here's how it happened. Approximately 65 million years ago, we got a lump of dough. Where'd the lump of dough come from? I don't have a clue, but we got a lump of dough. And then some of those lumps of dough, they had mutations, and they turned flat and hard and turned into cookies, and some others got puffy and turned into bread. But I'm not a cookie and bread guy, I'm a donut guy. And so some of those lumps of dough had mutations and turned into the plain donut. I started my research in the plain donut field, but I quickly got bored and moved into a very specific field of study. I'll get to it. Some of those plain donuts turned into the lumpy, bumpy, little sprinkle things. That's girly. Those are foo-foo donuts. I don't do that. And then you got the bear claw, the bagel, and the Cheerio. Now, I do have a minor in bear claws. Bear clawology. It's a field of study. Trust me. And by the way, I can prove this to you because you see the bagel, the bear claw, the Cheerio, the donut, and the lump of dough are all 98% similar, so obviously they all came from the same source. Have you ever heard that about apes and humans? You're 98% similar with a chimp. No, you are not. Unless you take 24% of the human DNA away and 14% of the chimp DNA and put spaces in, then you become 98% similar. But you got to do all kind of gymnastics to make that work. But even if you were, for the sake of argument, let me try this. Have any of you ever been driving yesterday and it started to rain? Were you driving yesterday and it started to rain? Anybody? Were you afraid as it started to rain because you were, man, I got to get under an underpass because a watermelon is going to bust my window out? Anybody cross your minds as you were driving? None of you thought about that? You should be afraid. You should be very afraid. Because a raindrop and a watermelon are 98% similar. So one of these days, look, it's not the 98% that's similar, it's the 2% that's dissimilar, that's so dissimilar, there's no way they came from the same source. And that's the same thing with apes and humans. Guys, my field of study is the Boston cream-filled donut. Yes. Do you accept my explanation of donut evolution? Anybody? I'm having t-shirts made and I will start selling them soon. Anybody want to join my donut club? $50 a year, you buy your own donuts and I'll give you a free t-shirt. Nobody. Most of you are looking at me like, you're a nut. That's besides the point. You think that's ridiculous? Do you know what that is? That is the chart that depicts whale evolution. All I did was replace the whale skulls with donuts and bagels and bear claws and Cheerios. Watch. I'm going to put the original chart up there. This is the chart that you will get that supposedly shows how a wolf-like animal went back into the ocean to become a whale. It's the exact same chart. The question marks, the dashed lines, everything is in the exact same place. All I did was replace skulls with donuts and bread and cookies. You laugh at my explanation of donut evolution. But that's taught as fact. And we have a generation that's abandoning the Word of God and going after this. And I want to say to you, because they don't know how to deal with it. Don't be afraid of this stuff. Don't be afraid of it. Deal with it. Richard Dawkins is a smart man. Smarter than me. But when the Holy Spirit pulls the scales off of your eyes, you're going to see things completely and totally differently. This is all I knew. This is all I was raised with. This is what, until I was 26 years old. Secular education, evolution's a fact. I first got saved. My first Sunday school teacher taught me, you take evolution, you put it in the Bible, God used it, God directed it, and that's what I believe. That's all I knew until somebody challenged me. And that's why I challenge you tonight. Go look for yourself. Sorry, I went a little long. Football game's on. By the way, did you notice all the question marks? Yes, they're there. Question mark means faith. Christians, we have faith, but so do the lost. Where do you place your faith this evening? Pastor, thank you for letting me be with you.